This is Letterbox zip. So what I have here is I have beginnings of a bag. So this is very beginnings, and I'm going to put a zipped pocket in the back of the bag. And what I'm going to do is I have my pocket fabric, I have my bag fabric, and the right sides are facing. And I have centered it and set it where I want it to be, kind of set down from the top and equal distance in from the sides. And I have drawn, if you can see, I have drawn a little rectangle. Now the rectangle is basically wide enough to fit the teeth of the zip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten my stitch length, and I'm going to sew all the way around this rectangle. If you can hear rummaging, it's one of my cats climbing around in the materials stored around my machine. So, one sec. I'm just going to carefully go up to the corner. So I want to leave enough that I can sew around the edge afterwards. So 4 stitches will do there. And down the other side. And right, that's grand. And then down, and we're going to overlap. Now, so just cut off the loose threads because they can get stuck in the machine and they get very annoying. So, if you can see, we have our rectangle. There's our rectangle. I think you can see it's visible there. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to get a little start here with a seam ripper. In fact, I can cut the whole thing with a seam ripper. What I'm going to do is carefully, very carefully, cut. I need to organize myself. Slice into it and very carefully cut down the middle until we get to about a finger width from the end here. And when we get there, we are going to cut into the corners. One thing I do sometimes in case I'm afraid of cutting into the stitches is I will put my seam ripper in just inside the corner, and I will rip there. So that's a very close. You get very close then without worrying about cutting into your corners. So I'm going to slice down here again, and then I'm going to carefully. I always think of the Siamese cats in Lady and the Tramp when I say that word. One. Again, we're not going to risk cutting our corner seam because we're not going anywhere near our corner seam with scissors. So there we go. Now what do we do? So now we turn the whole thing inside, push it all through. And this is where we have to tell the fabric to behave now. So it's, especially this outer fabric I've picked is quite stiff. So we're going to be telling it what to do and where to go, and I'm going to be quite firm with it. So this is how we get our nice lined pocket without weeping over the over having to do this against a cut edge. So we sew it and then we cut the edges. So, and that clunk, if you heard it, was another cat on the other side of the room clambering about on something else. So I'm going to pin these into place, and this may take a minute because the outer fabric, I've really picked stiff fabric. Why did I pick such stiff fabric? Oh dear, because I liked the stiff fabric, and it's a scrap and I want to turn it into a bag. That's why I picked it. Now if you've cut nicely into your corners, this will behave itself. It might be a little snarly if the fabric is stiff, as is happening now, but with a few judicious pins we will be able to make it behave. Now, I quite often put the zip in, like firm up this seam edge and put the zip in one go. This time I'm not going to, because I can't trust this is going to behave itself. If I were just using soft fabric or cottons or something, I would just, you know, give this a finger press and maybe a couple of pins, and I would work in the zip and I would off you go, one seam all around. But there we go, that's it better. But this is not behaving itself, so I'm not going to do that. So instead I'm going to very carefully sew around the edge. I'm going to make my stitch a bit wider now. So take out some of these pins. Now, wherever you are sewing around the edge, be sure that it's a seam you can sew with a zip in place, because you're going to be going over this and you want to go over the same line. So this is just kind of tell this fabric who's boss. I'm the boss. We're the boss of you, fabric. You don't get to decide. I want to be, there we go, careful going around this. I'm sure that everything is where it is supposed to be before I start putting stitches into it. Maybe one more teeny stitch. There we go. Now pin to these backwards, which means that the heads are pointing the wrong way, so they're hard to take out. And now here we go, nearly all the way around. And this kind of sewing, it's absolutely crucial that you leave your needle in when you're doing any movement at all, because this is going to be seen on the outside, and we want it to look neat as we can. Yeah, there we go. Right, so that's what it will look like on the outside once, well, it's on the zip, of course. So again, get rid of all the loose long threads, front and back. If you want, you can thread a needle and pull these to the back and then snip them off, but I'm not going to. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our zip in. I'm agnostic about whether it pulls from left to right or right to left. I'm just going to put a couple of pins in just to hold it in place. I'm going to change my foot for a zipper foot. Nope, not that zipper foot. Stupid zipper foot. There we go. Common garden zipper foot. Right. So I'm going to move the zip into the body. And I am going to pin these here and here. Now the zip is now tucked in. Almost. Come on. Now I'm going to put pop another pin here. No. Okay. Now we're ready to roll. Okay, so once again I'm going to pop this down. Make sure the zipper teeth are inside, and we're going to carefully push as close to the stitches as we can. I'm not going to cry if they're not bang on. No, take out this one. I'm going to move this zip very soon as well. Once again, keeping our needle in the fabric. We are going to be cutting the zip. And I take out zips and I move fabric around as and when I need to. And then move over here. I've gone over that a couple of times, which should be enough to secure it. Now we'll go down the other side. And the nice thing about this fabric, aside from it being really stiff, which isn't great, is it's got a couple of different colors running through it. It's this houndstooth thick pattern, and the thread I'm using matches very well. And because of its variegated texture and pattern, if my stitch line goes off, it's not really visible, so that's very handy. So I'm going to move my zip back down. Excuse me. And same thing here. I'm going to go across. I'm going to go back and forth a couple of times just to make sure. That helps keep the zipper ends together. Moving the zip up. You see, both times I accidentally went, it was a bit extravagant with my back stitch, and I went over the edge. But like I say, it won't show up on this fabric, so that's something to consider. Now, we don't need to go any further because we're overlapping. We don't need to back stitch. And now we have our zip in place, and we can cut it because we have securely sewn over the ends, as you can see. So I'm simply going to cut and cut. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to I'm going to put a couple of pins in just to help ourselves a little bit, and we're going to do back to my old foot. little back stitch. And then we're going to just whip around the outside, keeping this out of the way and keeping our fabric together as much as we can. Okay, turn this and fold this back. Oy, come on, fabric, work with me here. I know it's tight. Didn't make life easy for myself. Rather narrow amount of fabric, but it will work. Now, so there we go. We have this lovely little lined pocket, and when we have our bag, that will be on the back. The other thing I want to show you is, similarly, this is going to be the lining. I'm going to put a little, just a non-zipped pocket. So once again I've centered it, I've drawn my rectangle, and I'm going to sew around it again. This one is not going to have a zip, but it will have a little, oh yeah, I can't think of the word, you'll see it. Now, similarly, I'm going to cut into it, and I'm going to use my thread cutter to do the corners. So we're just going to carefully make a little snip and pull this out of the way to go. I'll cut down the other side because I have an understandable fear of cutting into my corners. I'm going to put, see, I'm not going in at the corner, I'm going inside, so I'm put the thread cutter in here and slice. And we're going to put the thread cutter on the inside again and slice. There we go, and that is our nice little corner. And again, I'm going to do the same on the other side. Do make sure with your thread cutter you're not cutting holes somewhere else in your fabric at the same time. So once again, we're going to push it all the way through. La 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 la. And this is nice soft cotton, so they're going to behave themselves very nicely. I hope they're listening, because they better. That's what I say. They had better. Too much fabric. No. Yeah, that's a bit better. Now, we have our pocket, and that would be very nice, and we could just go around here and then sew this up, and we would have that. That would be fine, but I don't want that. What I want is, I am going to go around this. I'm going to go around this now, and just going around from this side. I can keep tabs on my fabric better. So. No. Okay, once around the block. Just getting my threads out of the way before they get tangled up. It is worthwhile taking a minute to get this right. There's no shame in hand turning the wheel when you really want precision. There you go. That's enough. So we have this, isn't it lovely? Hooray! But let's do one more thing with it, just to give it that extra bit of oomph. And what we're going to do is we are going to fold and take this, and we're going to fold this so that it's just lining up with the top of the pocket. If you can see that, there's, so just line this up at the top of the pocket, and put a pin, trusty pins. So when we turn it over, and if it's just lining up at the top of the pocket, if it is just lining up at the top of the pocket, then what we have is a very nice little pocket with this. So I'm just going to get the threads out of the way. I'm going to go down here, center it. It's easier. Let's center our thread. Okay. Oh, let's go back in there. There we go. Whew. And we're going to go across. And down the other side. No, that'll do. No. So once again, check off those threads. So if you can see the construction there, we have simply folded up a little bit. Now we are going to do just what we did with the other pocket. And we're going to bin. And so, now then, be careful when we're sewing down that we sew this little wrinkle, okay, on both sides. We get the body fabric out of the way, just sewing the pocket fabric. We want to get our pins out of the way because we don't want to sew them at all. Down the other side, again getting everything out of the way, making sure our fold is in place, and off we go. Now, there we go. So now, it's now a nice inner pocket. It's not very deep, big enough for your keys or for change for the supermarket trolleys or whatever you're using it for. So this will be the inside lining, and this will be the outside, and I have another piece to do. It goes a flap around the outside, so it's coming together. Should see more of this in the future.